Nelson, your host and moderator. The show is being broadcast on 770 CHQR right here in Calgary and in Edmonton on 630 CHED. Every other Saturday morning during the summer at this time, I'll be speaking with Premier Jason Kenney about some of the issues of the day. But once again, this is really your opportunity to ask your questions of the Premier, to voice any concerns or issues that you feel need to be addressed. Whatever's on your mind, you can speak with the Premier one-on-one. The numbers in Calgary, 403-974-8255. In Edmonton, 780-496-0063. And across the province, 1-800-563-7770. Premier Kenney, welcome to the show.
Great to be back, Wayne. Thanks very much.
Now, Stampede is drawing to a close. Last week, your last official Stampede breakfast as Premier, and you announced that going forward, every September 1st is going to be known as Alberta Day, with more details to be unveiled. So what prompted that declaration? What can we expect?
Well, you may recall, Wayne, a couple of years ago, I appointed something called the Fair Deal Panel to see how we could create a stronger province, given some of the threats we face from Ottawa. And one of the recommendations was to do more to celebrate and educate people about what makes Alberta unique and distinctive, because we are a unique province. We truly are in our culture and our history. And so this is one small way of doing that. Alberta became a province on September the 1st of 1905. And every 25 years or so, we celebrate that. I think we should do it on an annual basis. They do in Quebec. They have Le Fête Nationale, the feast day of Saint Jean-Baptiste. Right. When every Quebecer comes out, flooding out with Quebec flags, celebrating their history, their culture, their community. I don't think we'll ever get quite that big. This won't be a stat holiday, but we will be doing some events around the province and sharing some fun information about our past. And one last thing, I think we need to be grateful about those who went before us, the sacrifices they made, the First Nations, the pioneers, the veterans, all of them. This is a chance to do that.
When will this take effect? This coming September 1st?
Yeah, absolutely. This September 1st.
All right. Now, big complaint from me and many other people has to do with gasoline prices. I was in Okotoks on Monday. Gas stations there charging as much as $1.87.9 a liter at Costco in Calgary, where I eventually filled up. The time it took me to drive from Okotoks to Calgary, I paid 24 cents a liter less. Now, that's a big variance. 2 weeks ago in Rocky Mountain House, I paid $1.75 a liter when it was $1.87 in Calgary. As of yesterday, according to GasBuddy.com, pump prices ranged anywhere from $1.72.9 to $1.89.9 a liter. Now, 2 weeks ago, Dan McTagg said if you looked at the rack rate, which I understand is the wholesale price that gas stations pay, he said it's clear that, quote, Calgarians are getting fleeced. Now, at that time, he said that rack rate or that wholesale rate was about $1.30 a liter. I'm rounding. He calculates that gas stations typically add on 21 cents a liter for federal tax, carbon tax, GST, another 10 to 12 cents a liter for operating costs and profit, which meant that the price 2 weeks ago should have been around $1.70 a liter. Now, that rack rate has continued to fall. Yesterday, when I checked on the Petro-Canada and the Shell sites, it was listed anywhere from $1.13 to $1.16. Now, that's 14 to 17 cents less than it was 2 weeks ago when McTagg made his comment. So if I use that same calculation he did, it means that pump prices should be around $1.53 to $1.57, or about 20 to 30 cents a liter less than gas stations are currently charging. Now, back in March, after you announced a tax reduction, you said the province would be prepared to resort to using legal tools to protect consumers and potentially bring in regulatory powers to compel retailers to pass on the tax reduction savings. Now, from a consumer standpoint, I'd say we're being gouged. I agree with McTagg. So what's the Alberta government doing? I haven't heard anything.
Well, listen, I know, Wayne, we all feel like we get gouged when gas prices are high. And it's true the prices do fluctuate. You have to shop around. You mentioned two retailers that tend, I think, one of them I know tends to be on the high side of price. There are others that are much lower. Yeah. But on average, we've been following this very closely. And bureaucrats at the Department of Finance see data that shows that fuel retailers are passing along Alberta's fuel tax savings to consumers. As you'll recall, on April 1, we suspended the 13 cent a liter Alberta fuel tax. We see that continuing to be embedded. Now, I can't show this to our listeners, but I'm showing Wayne in the studio a graph of Alberta fuel prices versus the rest of Western Canada, and the gap remains relatively stable, much cheaper. Of course, Alberta has by far the cheapest fuel prices, gasoline prices prices in Canada. And so we'll continue to monitor that, Wayne. All I can tell you is we have the cheapest prices. We have no Alberta fuel tax. If we ever see evidence, and by the way, Professor Trevor Toome at the University of Calgary, his estimate is that they are embedding the tax cut, so people are receiving that 13 cent a litre tax cut.
All right. Now, one other thing with surging prices, inflation, gasoline prices, the NDP is calling on the provincial and federal governments to investigate what's behind the surging price of beef in Alberta. We're the beef producing province, for goodness sake. So people are eating less because it's costing more. So what can be done there? Will there be an investigation launched?
Well, this is a longstanding concern, both of consumers and of ranchers, beef producers. There's no doubt that very healthy margins go to the packers. And here's the reality. We have only two large beef packers on the Canadian prairies. We have a couple of smaller ones, like Harmony and in Red Deer, but generally speaking, or in Central Alberta, excuse me, we generally speaking, we have the two large packers. And so there's not as much competition as we would like to see. And so the packing houses get to set the price. And what's one of the things that's frustrating is that the ranchers, the primary producers, don't really see a great deal of higher prices for their cattle when the retail price in the grocery store goes up.
Right.
So there are issues there. There are long-standing issues. And
will your government be doing anything?
Well, we're always working with the industry on this. But at the end of the day, competition law is a federal responsibility. And if there's any evidence of price collusion or price fixing, then people need to bring that to the attention of the Competition Bureau. That's a federal responsibility. I can tell you what we do is we work with the beef producers, with the feedlots. Last year, we stepped in when prices were price of feed was at a critical high, with frankly a subsidy program to help cattle producers get through that hard time. So we're always there to ensure a future for the industry, but we don't regulate the price.
Okay. All right, let's hit the phones, because that's what we're all about today. We're going to go to Justin in Edmonton. And Justin, we kind of addressed this off the top, fuel tax rebate, so make this one quick if you don't mind.
Yes. As you mentioned, the fuel tax saving, it doesn't seem to be passed along because, in Vancouver, the fuel price went from $2.34 to now it's $2 a liter. Fuel in Toronto is now cheaper than in Alberta, despite the fact that Ontario has 8% sales tax and it also still has its gasoline tax. So it's quite clear. But yes, I agree with you that from April to June, the retailers were passing on the fuel savings. However, in July, that appears not to be the case. And you mentioned, as our radio host said, that you would take legal action to compel the retailers to pass on the fuel savings tax cut. So what can be done to make sure that that's the case?
Well, we need evidence of this, and as I say, the academic evidence from Professor Toome is that they are passing on the savings, and that is what I'm getting back from the officials of the Department of Finance who track this. We're going to release our analysis that is done by our bureaucracy on a weekly basis in a easy to understand chart that will show that we're tracking prices and the tax savings that are embedded in the price. And all I can say is I certainly hope we'll see the prices come down further. They have been, of course, for the past couple of weeks.
All right. Let's see here. We're going to pause for a break right now. A good place to take a break. I'm Wayne Nelson. I will be back with Premier Jason Kenney and more of your calls and texts when we return on Your Province, Your Premier.
The BDC Small Business Loan is all for entrepreneurs. All for giving you quick and easy online access to the funds you need to increase your cash flow, buy new equipment, or invest in new technology. Apply now for a small business loan at bdc.ca/online loan and get up to $100,000 with favorable conditions. BDC. Financing, advising, smarts.
A strong work ethic. Takes pride in a job well done. Sweats over the details. This is you. But to get an honest day's work, you need a response. You need a callback. You need a job. Express Employment Professionals can help because we understand what it takes to get a job. It takes more than just online searches to land a job. It takes someone who will identify your talents, a person invested in your success. At Express, we can even complete your application with you over the phone. We'll prepare you for interviews and we'll connect you to the right company. Plus, we'll never charge a fee to find you a job. At Express, we can put you to work with companies of all sizes and industries, from the production floor to the front office. Express knows jobs. Get to know Express. Find your location at expresspros.com or on the Express Jobs app.
Now's the time to switch to Canada's best and most awarded 5G mobile network. Rely on Bell to stay connected. Switch today and save up to $240. Get $10 a month off for 24 months when you activate a new Ultimate plan that includes tons of data with no overage fees, unlimited calling, texting, and data in Canada and the U.S., and so much more. Visit a Bell store or bell.ca/switch for details. Bell, having the best just got better.
Summer camps are finally back at the Salvation Army. Kids will enjoy a holiday filled with fun activities and make lifelong friends. For many of them, this is their first camp experience. Help the Salvation Army give these kids the ultimate adventure with activities like archery, canoeing, and photography. But most of all, they get to just enjoy being a kid. You can help make camp a reality by donating at salvationarmy.ca.
Soak in the savings at Reside Furnishings. Hi, it's Jaylen Nye. If you're looking to replace that tired old chair or sofa, now is the ideal time to shop stressless at Reside. Right now, get a $100 instant rebate for every $1,000 that you spend on any qualifying stressless seating. This is the perfect opportunity to fill your home with the world's most comfortable seating for less. It's time for stressless. Shop Reside Furnishings on Mayfield Road and shopreside.ca.
It's not every day you get to chat with the Premier, but we're giving you that chance. Premier Jason Kenney is ready to answer your questions right now.
Call 780-496-0063. Your province, your Premier. On 630 CHAD, Edmonton's News. Today's Talk.
Welcome back. Your Province, Your Premier airs every other Saturday morning during the summer at this time from 10 until 11 throughout Alberta. Here in Calgary on 770 CHQR, in Edmonton on 630 CHED. I'm Wayne Nelson, and this is your opportunity to voice your concerns, address issues you feel are important to speak with the Premier one-on-one. Those numbers to call or text, 403-974-8255 in Edmonton, 780-496-0063, and across the province, 1-800-563-7770. We'll go right to the phones. I've been getting quite a lot of text messages as well, so please be patient. We will get to you as soon as we can, but we're going to go to Dawn calling from Edmonton. Go ahead, Dawn.
Mr. Kenney, thanks. I appreciate the fact that you're still answering questions for Albertans.
For sure.
I was listening to an interview last night. I invite everybody to go listen to it on the audio vault. It's between Dan McTaggart and Shane Hewitt. Dan McTaggart is the gas buddy guy.
Dan McTague.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, he sums up what's going on in the country, like in a 30-minute interview. He sums it up perfectly. But about the World Economic Forum and carbon tax and why our energy isn't being released and everything else, which is absolutely insane. So my question is how is it that a foreign corporation or country can influence and destroy the economics of our country and drive us into prosperity and turn us into a third world nation? Isn't there like laws against that, or isn't there something like before they would call it treason? But I just can't believe that this is happening when you watch it. And Dan explained it so well in that interview.
Sure. Can you tell me, Dan, where was that interview?
It was on 630 CHED. They have an audio vault, and it was at 4 a.m. I know, what am I doing up at 4 a.m., but that's reality.
You need to get some sleep, buddy. Well, listen, I know Dan McTague quite well. He's a friend of mine. We served together in Parliament for 15 years. Good guy. And I didn't hear that. I'll go and listen to it. But I suspect what he's saying is that the fundamental reason why fuel prices and energy prices are high is because there has been a total lack of investment in upstream production or upstream exploration and production of oil and gas. And there were relatively low prices between about 2015, 2017, and that explains some of the lack of investment. But a lot of it is because of anti-oil and gas policy. That's certainly the case here in Canada. Right now we've got oil is about $100 a barrel this year. And yet we're seeing no new greenfield capital investments in the oil and gas sector. In fact, of the 200,000 jobs created in Alberta in the past 18 months, only a very small number, I think it's about 15,000, came from oil and gas. The rest is in every other sector. And that's because the industry is not investing in new long-term projects. They're not doing that because they don't know if a federal government will permit new projects or will permit production. In fact, under the federal emissions reduction plan, they'd have to reduce production levels, which would just offshore oil production to OPEC dictatorship. So you're right. There is an element of this, which is foreign interference in Canadian politics, which is why I appointed the Allen Commission to look into foreign efforts to influence Canadian energy policy. The tar sands campaign that started at the Rockefeller Foundation in 2008 has been a coordinated effort to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, mainly from U.S. foundations, on bottlenecking Canadian resources. And I can tell you, when I was Minister of Defense, the Secretary General of NATO told me that there was clear evidence of Russian government involvement in opposing gas fracking in Europe. And Congress said that there was evidence of Russian government involvement in opposing North American pipelines. So you're right that there is foreign interference in all of this stuff. We've passed a law making it illegal for foreign contributions to political action committees in Alberta. We've called on the federal government to do the same. But the most important thing is to throw a spotlight on this, and thank you for asking the question.
All right, back to the phones. We're going to go with Brian in Calgary, and then after that, we're going to talk with David in Edmonton about inflation in restaurants. But first, Brian in Calgary on provincial trade barriers. Go ahead, Brian. You're on with Premier Kenny.
Okay, thanks, Premier, for taking my call. And just before I ask my question, and I have a suggestion to make as well, thanks for uniting the right in this province and getting the socialists out of government, and I hope we can do it again next year. My suggestion is, why don't we put a surcharge on oil from Alberta destined for the United States until our $1.3 billion loss on the Keystone cancellation is recovered. They're already getting our crude cheaper than world prices now. That's my suggestion. And then I have a question after you've responded to my suggestion.
Well, that's a creative one, Brian. I'll ask our lawyers about that one. We are suing them through a NAFTA panel challenge, as is TC Energy. My preference would be that we end up with an administration in a couple of years that comes back and says, no, we need that energy. Let's get the pipeline built. I don't want to put our producers at a competitive disadvantage. That's my first thought here, but that's an interesting thought. Thanks for putting that out there.
My question is, since the First Minister's meeting, I'm wondering if you made any more progress on getting these interprovincial trade barriers removed. I know you've been championing that cause since you came into power, and I didn't hear any updates on.
Oh yeah, no, that was a big focus of my work at the Premier's meeting in Victoria earlier this week, and I'll be honest. When they were planning the meeting, there was no discussion on the agenda of internal trade, which is ridiculous, and almost everything was calling on the feds to do this and that, which provinces have to do. But there's one thing that we can do as provinces, which doesn't cost taxpayers a dime. It doesn't require the federal government to do anything. And that is to knock down all of the stupid trade barriers to labor mobility, all the patchwork of different regulations. Economists and different think tanks estimate that these things cost Canada's economy and therefore consumers between $40 and $100 billion a year, Wayne. If there's one simple thing we could do in government to get inflation under control a little bit, get costs down, it would be to strike down all these pointless, stupid barriers. In Europe, they can do it. 28 separate countries, full free trade, full seamless labor mobility, full regulatory harmonization. So I did get a commitment renewed commitment from premiers to move forward. Alberta's led by example. We've also brought in our Labor Mobility Act, which tells our professional regulators they only have 20 days to recognize credentials from professionals from across the country moving here. We've asked other provinces to do it. And now Alberta is launching a study into possibly unilaterally recognizing regulations from other provinces. So if you're let's say a service rig moving from the Sask side of the Lloydminster to the Alberta side, you don't have to register and have different first aid kits and different equipment. We just accept the Sask regulations as a reasonable standard. That would be a massive savings for the Canadian economy, and Alberta's prepared in principle to lead the way.
Sounds like some common sense planning, too.
I think so.
All right, text message now. This one regarding the current leadership election race. This texter saying it's pretty clear that Danielle Smith will win the UCP leadership race based on one of her platforms on the Alberta pension plan. Now, we've discussed this on previous shows. You're really not putting your foot into the election race, but what's your general feeling on how it's going?
You're not going to draw me into it, Wayne.
Come on now.
Nice try.
You're out of the picture, or you will be in October.
Well, I'm not out of the picture. That's the point. I'm the leader of the party, and so it's not my job to interfere in that. I'll just repeat my general high level comment, which is that I hope that our members and the candidates will focus on the priorities of Albertans, of the broad mainstream of Albertans, and including the broad mainstream of Alberta Conservatives. Because if you go down all sorts of rabbit holes that appeal to like 5 or 10% of the population, if the party becomes a kind of hard right ideological debating society, as opposed to a movement that reflects the real, ordinary, day-to-day bread and butter concerns of families, then it won't win.
All right. Now, the rest of this text message said, you ran on at the last election, the report by the fairness meetings was completed 2 years ago. Why has it not been tabled if the interest is so high?
No, thanks for that. The Fair Deal panel, which I think is what the question is about, was done through the winter. There were dozens of public meetings. There was polling, public opinion research, consultations. That was done over the winter of 2020. It was released in the spring of 2020, just after COVID started. And this government has already implemented most of those recommendations, wholly or partly. And on top of that, we've done even more. And I'll give you an example. We got control over major industrial emissions from Ottawa. We got control over methane emissions. Those two items have saved billions of dollars for our largest industries. We got control over managing habitat in northern Alberta, a multi-billion-dollar ticket item. We got $1 billion out of Ottawa for well reclamation to put thousands of blue-collar oil field service workers to work during the downturn. We got a lifting of the cap on the fiscal stabilization program, which increased transfers from Ottawa by about $430 million. We got all 10 provinces to support us on our successful constitutional challenge of the No More Pipelines Law Bill C-69. We held our referendum on equalization. I think it was 65% voting in favor, increasing our leverage with Ottawa. We renewed the Alberta Senate Election Act. We held our Senate elections as we committed to. We created the Alberta Provincial Parole Board. We appointed an Alberta Chief Firearms Officer. We're continuing to do the deep technical work necessary to give Albertans an option on a provincial pension plan and a provincial police force, and much, much more. No government in modern Alberta history has done more to build a stronger province within the Canadian Federation, in my opinion.
All right. Quick text message. What are your plans as far as helping Alberta after your premiership is over? People ask me, are you going to stick around? Of course I am. An Albertan. I've lived here my entire adult life, love this province, and always will. And so I haven't figured out, I'm focused, honestly, when I'm just totally focused on my job. I've got probably about 90 days in this privileged position where I can serve the province, and I'll figure out what my next act is after that. But I'm sure I'll be involved in some community charities. I'm sure I'll be involved in some public commentary of articulating the need for respect for provinces, for our energy industry, and all of that. So the themes that have defined me in the past few years, I'll continue to fight for. All right. I had promised that we would go to David in Edmonton after our last call, so David, you're on with Premier Kenny. Go ahead.
Hello, Premier. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Sure.
I warned them before I went on that I was a UCC candidate here in Edmonton, an unsuccessful one. So my opinion is a little bit biased. However, my question was about any sort of COVID relief or inflation relief that might be forthcoming for Alberta restaurants. As you know, I opened a restaurant in the last year. Being a new business, we weren't able to take advantage of any federal COVID relief grants. And it's funny, the only grant we actually did receive for COVID relief was the REP grant from the provincial government, $2,000. So I know you touched on the costs of beef, which, funny enough, is our most popular item, and our wholesale costs in the last year have doubled, give or take.
Wow.
And we haven't been able to double our prices. Our goal is to try to stay competitive. So, so that's my question. Is there any sort of inflation relief forthcoming for Alberta restaurants right now?
Well, full disclosure, Wayne, I know David, and David's restaurant is the Transit Hotel Barbecue and Smokehouse, and I'm just going to throw in a free advert. It's a great historic venue with the best barbecue in Alberta, in my humble opinion. David, look, the answer is no. I'm sorry to say that, but this is not a centrally planned economy where we start farming out subsidy checks to particular sectors that are going through a difficult time. I don't want to sound cold-hearted about that. It's just hard-headed. And I know the restaurant business has been through just a brutally tough time, obviously through COVID. I know that the newer restaurants didn't benefit from any of the COVID relief programs that existed at that time. I know it's hard to get labor. I know food inflation, all of that is challenging. But I will just say that's a competitive reality right across the sector and all across the province, all across the country, all across North America. I hope that despite those prices, you're seeing more business. I'm certainly anecdotally, I know I was trying to get a reservation for a restaurant with a couple of friends last night in Calgary, and 5 restaurants we tried were sold out. Sure. So I hope some of that is helping the gross revenues of the sector recover. Certainly tourism, I can tell you, I'm not sure about Edmonton, but Calgary, you can hardly get a hotel room. Wayne and I were just talking. They're selling prior to the show. They're selling hotel rooms in 2-3-star hotels, 2-star hotels in downtown Calgary for $600 a night. And so people are coming back to the province. People are spending. There is pent-up savings, and I hope that will help people through this. But fundamentally, we've got to get inflation under control. That means the feds need to stop surging money. And here's another point.
Well, we did have the Bank of Canada increase a full percentage, a full point.
But the other thing is, if governments go into a spending, open up the spending tabs to help people with inflation, we are helping people with inflation. But if we just do that without discretion, we're going to end up further surging inflation. We make the problem even worse. So we are putting out $2.3 billion of consumer relief, but we've got to watch it, because if there's an over fiscal stimulus, that will just feed further into inflation.
All right. Gord has been hanging on for over 20 minutes, so we're going to go to Gord in Edson. Go ahead, Gord. You're on with Premier Kenny.
Thank you very much, Premier, for taking my call. I'm afraid when you're gone, it's impossible to get good people, and I'm afraid the other party is going to become in power when you're gone. And secondly, I've been dealing with compensation for 10 years now, and I can get nowhere with them. I just wondered if I can get any help. I can't get any help from my MLA.
Thanks, Gord. Is that workers' compensation?
Correct.
Okay. Well, Gord, I don't know your case, and it would be wrong for me to ask for personal details on the radio here. Jeepers, one of the things MLAs do help constituents with, for sure, is WCB applications and the like. I'm not quite sure what to tell you. If your local MLA is not helping, maybe go to a neighboring MLA. and to see if they can rattle their chain. That's all I could say. I'm sorry.
All right. Premier Kenney, we're going to go to the text lines, and quite a few texts have been coming in regarding COVID and vaccines. This question doesn't have a name from it. Do you have any regrets regarding instituting a vaccine passport?
Well, I don't think Alberta ever had a vaccine passport. We had temporarily a proof of vaccination program or a negative test alternative for discretionary activities. That is not a passport, which is a hard requirement for a vaccination. So we always had the alternative. I think we're the only province that did so. And no, I don't regret it because we were in mid-September of last year about 10 days from running out of intensive care beds in our hospitals. Now, Wayne, let me be blunt. Many of the people who ask me that question or who are skeptical or hostile to vaccines do not focus on or sometimes don't even admit that our hospitals were close to running out of capacity. But it's simply the truth. We had 340 ICU patients in Alberta hospitals in a system that normally has 173 ICU beds. So we were 100% over capacity. If we'd hit about 365 ICU patients, we would have been, I would have had to sign a triage protocol to authorize Alberta Health Services to pull life support off of certain patients. That's a polite way of saying killing people, denying others care, medevacing patients from Alberta to Toronto because all the other Western Canadian hospitals were full, plus asking relatives to care for patients in overflow wards without the assistance of nurses and doctors. I think that would have been grossly immoral, contrary to all of our values. And so we had to do something. And to say that if you wanted to go to a nightclub or a casino, you had to show a negative test or proof of vaccination at a time when 90% of our ICU patients were unvaccinated. 90% were unvaccinated. Now, that's no longer the case under Omicron. Omicron is significantly different than the Delta variant was. Right. But I do not have any regret for avoiding a total catastrophe in our hospitals.
All right. One more question from the text line, and then I have a follow-up question. This is all COVID-related. This is from Kira in Calgary. After seeing what vaccine passports did to Albertans last year and how the unvaccinated were demonized, will you oppose vaccine mandates and newly imposed federal government requirement for Canadians to have a booster every 9 months in order to be considered up to date?
Yes, I oppose vaccine mandates, which is why I introduced in the legislature a bill that became law to amend the Alberta Public Health Act to remove the power of government to compel people, coerce people to be vaccinated. So we removed the power of mandatory vaccination from Alberta law. And I have consistently opposed the pointless federal vax mandates, for example, on truckers and travelers. We have passed a motion in the Alberta legislature in April calling on the feds to drop all of that. And we'll continue to oppose that. Look, I strongly encourage people to get vaccinated, and if they are eligible, to receive updated shots to give them maximum protection from severe outcomes. But at this stage, with the high degree of population immunity and the declining severity of the COVID-19 variants, I don't believe that policies like mandates are justifiable.
All right. Provincial Court of Alberta released documents this past Wednesday that give us a little bit of a glimpse behind some of the cabinet discussions regarding COVID. And I'm quoting Lorian Hardcastle, Associate Professor of Law at the U of Calgary's Cummings School of Medicine. He said, quote, "The big takeaway for me was how focused this was on reopening being a key driving concern of pandemic policy." And of course, Gil McGowan from the AFL has been somewhat critical. Your response, sir?
Gil McGowan, the NDP front guy, has been critical of Conservative government. That's a big headline there, Wayne.
Yep.
Let's be clear. Gil McGowan, who runs an illegal affiliate of the NDP, his organization, the AFL, has seats on the board of the NDP. They're the same organization. What's this all about? He is in court right now trying to get a judge to force us to put masks on kids as young as 5 years old going to school when the rest of the world has moved on. That's where the NDP is at right now. While the rest of us are learning to live with COVID, while kids have got their lives back, and yes, we did prioritize. I'll admit it. Put this in court if you want, Gil. I admit that we prioritized lifting restrictions on kids because they had paid a disproportionate price to their mental health and their social lives, their overall well-being through COVID, for a disease that poses a tiny risk to young children in terms of severe outcomes. And so we said, coming out of Omicron, let's prioritize getting kids' lives back to normal. We led Canada in that, and I'm proud to say we did so. And I think Rachel Notley has something to answer for, that her front guy, Mr. McGowan, is out there trying to get a court to force kids to wear masks when schools come back in August and September. I think it's outrageous.
All right, let's switch gears. We're going back to the phones. Harry is calling in from Edmonton. Go ahead, Harry. You're on with Premier Kenny.
Good morning, Premier Kenny. Thank you for your hard work and service in a period of time that you served Alberta and all the residents. I just want to ask... I guess it might be a double question. In the Department of Marital Properties, when people are married and so forth, I guess the spouse is entitled to half of the
estate,
net worth, property, or so forth. And I'm wondering who the minister of that department is. Does she live in the Vegro riding? Hominick or something?
Oh, no. Well, Minister Armstrong Hominiuk is the Associate Minister for Status of Women. They are not responsible for marriage law or for family law. I mean, family law is within the purview of the Department of Justice, but really what you're talking about is within the purview of the courts. It's the courts that determine, typically in a contested divorce, what the property, how the property will be allocated, issues around child custody, usually the family division of the provincial court, and so it's not politicians who do that. Like, so there's no law that I'm aware of that says what percentage of property in a contested divorce goes to which party. There are principles that have been developed through the common law, through precedent, which are applied and interpreted based on the individual facts of a case. Either if people go to arbitration or they end up going to the family division of the court.
All right, quick question before we go to a break. This is a COVID one again. Any idea when those under 70 can get a fourth vaccination?
Under 70, well, probably fairly soon. The National Advisory Committee on Immunization, I think last week, perhaps it was earlier this week, just a few days ago, did recommend broader availability of the fourth dose to people under 70, but always recommending that the highest priority there be people who are immune compromised or may have unique vulnerabilities. So we're looking at that. We're consulting with the Alberta Provincial Advisory Committee on Immunization, as well as taking advice from the Chief Medical Officer for Health, and we'll be making an announcement in the fairly near future on that.
All right. We're going to pause for a break. I'm Wayne Nelson with Premier Jason Kenney. We'll be back to wrap things up in our final segment on Your Province, Your Premier.
Cirque du Soleil invites you to immerse yourself in the world of insects, teeming with joy, amazement, and unstoppable energy. Ovo by Cirque du Soleil, now playing through Sunday at Rogers Place. Experience spectacular acrobatics with the whole family. Tickets on sale at CirqueDuSoleil.com. Ovo thanks its presenting partners Sun Life Global Investments and its official partner MasterCard.
When it comes to buying Progressive glasses, you know what sucks? Getting ripped off. But you know what sucks even more than that? Finding out you didn't have to. Bailey Nelson is here to save you money. Right now, you can get 2 pairs of premium Progressive glasses, including lenses, from just $450. That's an extra $100 off our usual 2-pair price. But you better hurry. Offer ends soon. T's and C's apply. Book an eye exam today at BaileyNelson.com or visit us in store.
what would it take for you to switch your internet?
Lower price.
Faster speed. Well, ExploreNet's most popular internet plans are at their lowest price ever.
Lowest price?
Fast speed? Like for gaming and streaming? Yes and yes. ExploreNet LTE internet is now just $59.99 a month, guaranteed for your entire term.
I like that.
Plus, truly unlimited data means your speed won't slow down no matter how much data you use.
We love that.
ExploreNet LTE internet. Now only $59.99 a month. Details at explorenet.com.
Hi, it's Kelly from Karen Phytoplankton. We have a feeling many of you are listening to the Karen Phytoplankton ads and thinking it's too good to be true, or this is another snake oil. Maybe you don't want to be let down again. We get it. Consider this. You're hearing about Karen now, but we've been in business since 2015. Phytoplankton has been around a lot longer, over 1 billion years. Karen started with just one pharmacy and is now found in Costco and pharmacies across Canada. Pick up your 2-month supply the next time you're at Costco or visit thekarenproject.ca.
Hi, Mike here from Northgate Chevrolet Buick GMC. The sounds of summer are here. Ooh, that last one. That's not good. Definitely not the way you want to kick off summer. The good news is, at Northgate Chevrolet Buick GMC, we're having a road trip and service event. Bring your vehicle by today for a multi-point vehicle inspection and a tire rotation, and we'll ensure you're road trip and ready. Visit us online at northgategm.com.
Really great food matters at Freezin' Brothers, so whether you're grilling that perfect steak cut by our in-store butchers or charring delicious corn on the cob or grill marking our traditionally in-store baked sourdough, we have all the quality ingredients for your perfect Alberta barbecue season. So step outside, heat up the grill, and sear your favorite meals with quality ingredients for you and your family. Keep the grilling tradition alive with fresh, local food from your local Freezin' Brothers.
Everyone has the right to live without fear, hurt, abuse, and violence. Sometimes all it takes is making that one call to break the cycle.
Do it for me. For me.
And for yourself. When faced with family or domestic violence, know your rights and the law. No one ever deserves to feel alone and abandoned. If you or someone you know are suffering, it's time to speak out. Call the Family Violence Info Line at 310-1818 or 911 if in immediate danger.
It's your chance to bend the ear of Alberta's leader. Call now 780-496-0063 to talk to Premier Jason Kenney.
You're listening to Your Province, Your Premier on 630 CHAD, Edmonton's News. Today's Talk.
Wayne Nelson back with you as host and moderator of Your Province, Your Premier. Broadcast throughout the province in the summer every Saturday morning. That's not right. It's every other Saturday morning. Every other Saturday morning from 10 until 11 right here on 770 CHQR in Calgary and on 630 CHED in Edmonton. The numbers to call if you have a specific question, if you have a concern or an issue you'd like to bring to Premier Kenney's awareness, the number is 403-974-8255. In Edmonton, 780-496-0063. And across the province, 1-800-563-7770. We're going to be going to Kim in Calgary regarding an oil sands question. But before we do, article came out this week, Mr. Kenney, regarding bracket creep. Now, when you started your career with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, you championed getting rid of bracket creep, and it's now become an issue again, bracket creep. So, in your last days as official premier of this province, do you have any plans to take on bracket creep again?
Well, yes. We had to, look, Wayne, I'll just take you back. In 2019, we inherited an $8-9 billion structural deficit. The province has been running deficits for nearly a decade. We are starting to push $100 billion in debt, and we had to do something to get that under control. And the one change we made on the revenue side was temporary de-indexation of the tax code. Recognizing that Alberta has the most generous basic personal exemption of all the provinces by far. I think it's nearly $19,000 a year now. 40% of Albertans pay no provincial income tax. So we just brought that in as a temporary deficit reduction measure. Now that the deficit is gone, I am 100% confident that this government will move back to re-index the tax code in Alberta. But we can't do that effectively until the next fiscal year, because if we did it now, it wouldn't show up in people's returns. They wouldn't see that until the rebate in May, June of next year, after they file their returns. So I believe all of the candidates to succeed me have committed to that. I certainly am. We will go back to the reindexation of the Alberta tax code.
All right. As promised, back to the phones. Kim in Calgary, oil sands production concern. Go ahead, Kim.
Hey, actually, feel free to correct me if my numbers are wrong, because I have limited resources to check the facts. But you've traveled the world on the taxpayer's dime, bragging about Alberta's ethical oil. Yet I understand 5 Suncor oil sands workers have died from work-related injuries since 2021. What did you and your government do after each of these needless deaths to ensure Suncor is operating in a safe manner? And with 5 deaths since 2021, one can only imagine how many workplace injuries are happening at Suncor. I can't think of another company or industry that could get away with this carelessness.
Well, thank you, Kim. Any workplace death is a tragedy and requires a serious response, both from the company itself and regulators. In this case, I don't know about each individual one of those cases, but there is, under the Alberta legislation, often an inquiry that can be launched into a particular workplace fatality. And, of course, there are very robust safety regulations that companies must follow. I would say that there's not one company or one industry that has safety issues and tragically sometimes workplace fatalities, but these are things that sadly happen across the economy. And Canada has, when I talk about Canada's ethical oil, my point is this. There is no doubt that our oil and gas companies operate under the most robust regulations, including for workplace safety. If you think that there is anything like an inquiry into or any meaningful enforcement of workplace regulations in Venezuela or Putin's Russia or Saudi Arabia or Iran, I think that's a bit naive. The point is that we do have the highest standards. We expect companies to follow them, and there are very severe penalties if they don't.
All right, Chris calling from Devon on a cannabis question. Go ahead, Chris.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for taking the time today. I work in the retail side of the cannabis industry, and I'm just curious on what the government's planning to do to come in and help our industry. Obviously, coming in so heavy regulated and watching the regulations pour on, as well as Alberta being the highest taxed province. We're going to be looking at 40% closures this year in retail, as well as on the LP side of things. I'm just wondering if there's any plans to talk with industry to see about ways to help.
Thank you, Devin. Well, thanks for flagging that. And we're always willing to talk to any industry. We're constantly consulting with different industries on how we can reduce red tape. We've reduced by 200,000 now the number of regulatory requirements imposed by Alberta's government. That's a 1/3 reduction in Alberta's regulatory burden. We've gone from an F to an A on the Canadian Federation of Independent Business red tape reduction report card. Now, your industry is obviously going to have strong regulations because of the nature of the product that you sell. But my understanding is that Alberta has the most open private market for private retailers and the lightest touch on regulations in Canada. But thanks for flagging that, and I'll pass that on to our Minister of Finance, who's responsible for regulating your industry.
All right.
And the Alberta AGLC as well. Yeah.
Text message now. How will you ensure that any appointments made to agencies, boards, commissions, and other publicly funded institutions during your last months as Premier are not viewed as favors or patronage appointments? And will you turn these over to an independent committee for oversight?
Look, if you look at the answer is this. So if you look at the what we call governor and council appointments, which are basically appointments made by cabinet to agencies, boards, and commissions, we've done thousands, probably over 2,000 or 3,000, I think, over the past 3+ years. And they are people appointed based on merit, who reflect the diversity of today's Alberta, who are competent, and we actually, Wayne, I think I'm probably the first Premier, I'm guessing, in history who keeps an eye on the percentage of those appointees who have clear ties to my party to minimize that. By the way, sometimes conservatives are qualified and want to do public service. And secondly, these are not, with a very few exceptions, like a handful of exceptions, these are not plum patronage positions. These are generally like sitting on a board and maybe getting, I don't know what it is, like a $150 per diem to show up at a day-long meeting, okay? These are basically public service things. A lot of people just even turn down those small per diems to sit on these boards.
I believe you can actually make an application online to
and I encourage people to do that. Member. So I, as best I can tell, a very small fraction of the people that we've appointed have connections to my party. But I do think that conservatives should be able to serve there as well as people from other backgrounds. And we have appointed former NDP MLAs and former Alberta Party MLAs, former Liberal Party MLAs, to make the point that this is based on competence and not partisan affiliation.
All right. We've got time for, I think, one more phone call. We're going to go to Lionel on a Windsor plant concern. Go ahead, Lionel.
Hi, Premier Kenny. I want to thank you first for your years of service here and for being such a great premier and handling the fact that you were between a rock and a hard place.
Thank you, Lionel.
But right off the bat, I don't know if you are aware or not. You can't be aware of everything. But the repurposing of oil wells in Alberta to produce lithium.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know of this situation?
Oh, yeah.
Well, since Stellantis is building a massive lithium battery plant at Windsor, $5 billion worth, and I'm sure there's going to be federal. I mean, I know that you're provincial, but I'm sure there's going to be federal granting that'll happen because precedent was already set.
Lionel, we'll have to get to your point right away because we're running out of time.
Okay. Why would Stellantis want to source lithium in Germany when they can source it in Canada and a really clean source coming along in Alberta?
Good question, Lionel. Interestingly, just yesterday I talked to the Federal Minister of Industry, François-Philippe Champagne, about exactly this. And he was in Japan recently promoting Canada for more as a venue for more lithium battery production. And we talked about why not here in Alberta, because we know we have the resource. We have passed a Minerals Act to make it easier for companies like that to develop that resource. And I am planning a potential investment promotion trip to Asia to promote exactly that, which would be lithium battery production based on our feedstock right here. So I think you're making an excellent point. I don't know why that company in Windsor is sourcing from Germany. I think our industry here is not yet mature enough. I will tell you this. The U.S. Congress is really focused on this issue about onshoring in North America production of critical minerals, and particularly lithium. And I think there's going to be huge amounts of capital available for that future industry in the province.
Premier Kenny, once again, it has been a pleasure. I enjoy your bi-weekly visits, and thanks for joining us again today.
Hope everybody has a great end to the Stampede, and I think today we may click past record turnout for the greatest outdoor show on earth.
That's what I heard, yeah. We'll do this again in a couple of weeks at the same time. I'm Wayne Nelson. You've been listening to Your Province, Your Premier.
Before moving into your new home, it's time to give back to yourself. Get up to $3,000 back when you choose to lock into a 5-year mortgage with ATB today. Learn more at atb.com/mortgage.
A non-traditional ring isn't for everyone.
But is there a chance it's exactly right for you?
The distinctive feature of every non-traditional engagement ring is that it features a far from perfect diamond.
Far from perfect.
Beautifully imperfect.
And that's what makes it unique.
It's a real diamond, scars and all.
Scars and all.
Scars and all.
You'll find your non-traditional diamond waiting patiently for you to look at it and say,
"Woo!" Spence Diamonds. Wow! Located across from the West Edmonton Mall.
They have the passion.
Paging Dr. Napaluk to OR3. Dr. Napaluk to OR3.
They have the knowledge.
Okay, class, please open your books to page 35.
They have the skills.
Good morning, passengers. Your pilot today.
Indigenous youth in Canada are ready. Now, they need the opportunity. Inspire provides post-secondary financial assistance to thousands of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis students every year. Learn how your support of Inspire can provide the opportunity for a brighter future. Visit buildingbrighterfutures.ca.
Are the summer holidays the right time to plan your estate? Paul Lindsay from Macmillan Estate Planning explains why summer is a good time to plan.
The summer's longer days give families more time to come together. Now, as well as reminiscing and building new memories, you can also address any concerns around your estate at that time.
Register for Macmillan Estate Planning's upcoming webinar on Wednesday, July 27th at macmillanestate.com or call 1-833-266-6464.
Soak in the savings at Reside Furnishings. Hi, it's Jaylen Nye. If you're looking to replace that tired old chair or sofa, now is the ideal time to shop stressless at Reside. Right now, get a $100 instant rebate for every $1,000 that you spend on any qualifying stressless seating. This is the perfect opportunity to fill your home with the world's most comfortable seating for less. It's time for stressless. Shop Reside Furnishings on Mayfield Road and shopreside.ca.
Last year, 21 motorcyclists sadly lost their lives on the road. Several of those were the fault of the rider. A few were the tragic left turn scenario. This year, we must do better. This summer, the training schools are open, but they'll fill up quickly. You can get your bike license easier now, too. So get trained, wear the proper gear, ride within your limits, avoid impairment of any sort. Please, use your head. We are the Alberta Motorcycle Safety Society.
CHED, part of the DNA of Edmonton. The mighty 630 CHED, Edmonton's news. Today's talk.
A Chorus Entertainment radio station.
Global news at 11 o'clock. Good morning. I'm James Dunn. It's 23 degrees, high of 28 for today. Mix of sun and cloud, but still the humidex could go up to 32 for today. Low of 15 for tonight. Premier Jason Kenney says the province is not responsible for stepping in on the rise in beef prices. According to Stats Canada, the price of ground beef has jumped